Okay. Trying to see if this is going to skip out, but hopefully it won't. All right. Hi, my name's Isabel. I imagine that this background will be a little bit more aesthetic over time, but yeah, for now we're rolling with it. We're rolling with it, and at the end of the day, this is not necessarily about aesthetics. This is about information and important information, important topics. So welcome. I welcome you to Biohacking Wonder, the podcast. I intend for this podcast to be a conversation around these really relevant things that are impacting our life currently and our future. So I am interested in talking with you all and also having podcast guests and people that are working in this space to share about this biohacking world. I am a technology optimist. I am a future enthusiast. With that being said, I am also a scientist and a researcher, and I'm incredibly intuitive. So with that kind of combination, I just think it's important that we discuss things like ethics and safety as it relates to the amount of technology that is infiltrating our lives. And I'm going to start this podcast out. I intend to record maybe one episode a week. I already have some ideas for what the other ones are going to be. And, just letting things evolve over time, and certainly interviewing people is the main goal. But just to get kind of my toes wet and to get you familiar with me and see if you're interested in, in this journey, we'll start here. So again, I'm Isabel, and I'm just going to share a little bit about my background and kind of why I got interested in this field, and where I see it going, and just like the journey. So buckle up. Okay, so I am 32 years old. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. But for the past 15 years, I've really just been traveling around the world by myself and solo. I'm an incredibly independent person, I think, for myself, and I definitely do not comply. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm kind of fierce, but kind of the ferocity that a mother bear probably has. So just kind of keeping that in mind. While I am spiritual, I am a yoga teacher. I'm interested in consciousness deeply, and I've studied a lot. I also have another part of me that does not tolerate injustices, and that's just how I am. So if that's your style or you're into that, then I welcome you, but just recognize that my perspectives and my viewpoints can sometimes be seen as alternative. I'm also very open to changing my mind. I'm open to listening. I take in a lot of information very quickly and deeply. I process it, I synthesize it, and I use that to feed my own opinions or help me shape opinions, right? So I'm not fixed in my belief on things. I think but I want to empower you to take control of your own critical thinking, learn to trust yourself, and to figure out what feels right for you and what feels right for your family when it comes to technology and our health and our society and all of those really important and relevant topics. I've worked in the service field for about a decade. I have spent time in psychiatric hospitals with highly, highly suicidal children. I have worked in rehab centers, Medi-Cal facilities, with majority homeless people. I've worked with people who have AIDS, helping them getting housing subsidies and grants, right? So I have dedicated the past decade of my life to service. And so I think that's an important thing to say, because I'm not motivated by money. I'm motivated by truth, and trying to make sense of this world sometimes feels incredibly overwhelming, and especially these past few years. So I want to invite dialogue and conversation and differing opinions and differing perspectives, right? I deeply value that. So that's kind of my vibe. I'll hear you out, but at the end of the day, like, I do not really necessarily believe, through my understanding of quantum physics and reality just isn't fully what our senses perceive. And because of that, I'm open to the mystery. And I just don't necessarily believe that there is a one-size-fits-all solution for every person on this planet. I think what we believe is a big part of what works and what doesn't work. So it's important that we get in touch with what we believe and what feels true to us. And that might be different than what I believe and what feels true to me. But I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to inform you. So you can make your own empowered decision, and I invite you to do your own research and to dive in so you can feel empowered, right? Oftentimes in our society, we are, especially people that are really struggling for different reasons. Our modern healthcare system is really failing our people. That's a perspective, that's an opinion I have, but when I've witnessed so much suffering over the decade plus of people, good people that are in very unfortunate circumstances, and they're a product of a sick society. Someone told me recently the way they measure in Israel, the way they measure the health of society is how they treat their sickest people. And, living out in San Francisco and in the Bay Area and in Los Angeles and just witnessing, people walking over homeless people and just becoming so desensitized to the dramatic amount of suffering all around us. And amidst such a disparity of wealth, it's just that I'm not about that. And I just see how financial security is another part and an interesting piece, which we can maybe dive into another time, about, feeling empowered, right? You want to be able to make health decisions for you, your loved ones, your pets, everyone, everything. But oftentimes, money is a barrier to that, and leads people to put things off, to not tend to their health, to avoid things, right? I think that's a big problem. So that's something things being equitably accessible and scalable and things like that, I think are important, because oftentimes some of this information is siloed into these kind of elite circles. And I want to kind of shift that for people to learn some things and be able to feel empowered about their health, hopeful about the future, because oftentimes people feel hopeless and they feel like they can't make a difference. And I think that's a part of the reason why I'm feeling called to do this. I'm I just feel like I need to talk about it. So anyway, so that's kind of a little bit about my like my integrity, and just like how I roll. So on top of that, I'll go into a little background about like where I started. So I graduated from university in 2013. I went to Vanderbilt University, and I was really on track for this, certain career path that would lead me to probably working in consulting in one of the top consulting firms, like a lot of people did. I studied human and organizational development with a minor in community development and leadership. And I'm also an avid yogi. So I've been doing yoga for about 20 years, since I was about 10. It's been really helpful for me, and I would love to like connect more about that too. But essentially, once I graduated Vanderbilt, I just did not feel good about joining a 9-to-5 and being part of a corporation. And honestly, my perspectives on that have changed a little bit. Again, there's not a right answer for everybody. I think there needs to be a way to bridge this versus like tear everything down. And that's my perspective right now. But I was seeking kind of also more emotional understanding. I'm not necessarily driven by money and things like that. I was feeling very intrigued by kind of these other realms and consciousness and the things that we can't really quite see. Feelings we get, intuitions, hunches, dreams, right? That was really where I didn't find that there was really anything personally more interesting in this world than that. Just the unseen world. So I think over the past 10 years, that industry and that field has grown. And, the wellness space, right? But I started a student organization at Vanderbilt University in 2013 called Creative and Conscious Community, and it was far out. It was seen as like as spiritual, but was it religious? Right? We were talking about topics like this, and religious organizations had a whole other kind of thing that needed to happen for a student organization. So they were seeing it as religious, and now I think wellness and like in our zeitgeist. There's just a lot more kind of space. And again, right, these are good things. These are good changes. So there are so many good things that have happened, and I recognize that. But so I started, I became a yoga teacher. So once I graduated, I got my degree or my registered yoga teacher training, 200 hours in Baptiste. And I found yoga to be incredibly helpful for me to dial in and be in touch with my intuition. So sometimes when I take a yoga class, I'll meditate on something, or I'll have something in my mind, and I'll kind of just do my class. By the end of the class, something will pop into my head, and it'll be maybe an answer, some clarity, some wisdom, right? So I've learned how to kind of dance with my consciousness in different with different approaches. So I moved out to California, as many people do, or they did. Who knows if that's still kind of like the dream to move out there. So I moved out there, and I started working with Bill Domhoff at UC Santa Cruz, the quantitative study of dreams. Again, my interests were dreams, and I didn't care if I had to work at a beach bar or drive Uber. I'm motivated by, again, certain things, right? So I started working for Professor Domhoff, and they coded people's dreams. So it's called the Hall Van de Castle coding system, where they take people's dreams and they categorize them with this pretty elaborate coding system that can be then used for analysis later on. So there's different qualities in dreams, right? Are they misfortunes? Are they good fortunes? Was there a success in the dream? Was there a failure? Was there a friendly interaction? Was there a sexual interaction? So I've coded thousands of people's dreams within these parameters and also done qualitative research on them. I worked for that project for about 10 years, and I'm still in great communication, and I would love to have him, Professor Domhoff, on here so he can we can talk more about that, because that's a kind of a foray into this interest in both this overlap of consciousness and technology, right? This coding system, this way to quantify, analyze. So I found that very intriguing, and I worked with that on that project for a while. I also started working with Stanford University, where it might still be the largest child mindfulness studies to date, where we implemented a mindfulness curriculum in schools for 3 years and saw how it impacted child development. So I both taught the classes with my yoga training, breathe, move, rest. We couldn't call it yoga. And then I also did research at Stanford. The biggest finding from that study was an hour in the group that had the mindfulness curriculum. They found on average an increase of 1 hour more of sleep per night from that curriculum. So that was a good finding. Sleep science, right? That's another kind of optimization thing that I'd like to talk about. And biohacking, right? So hacking your sleep, right? Okay, here's one example of mindfulness improving sleep. So a way to hack your sleep could be, one approach of many, is to meditate or do mindfulness. Not the answer for everyone. That's what what I love about biohacking is that you decide what works for you. And I love that. You are self-experimenting. You're experimenting on yourself to figure out what works, what doesn't work. We're not putting all of our answers into the hands of some, superior class or whatever it is to tell us what to do, what decisions to make, what's this, what's that. No, we can think for ourselves. Thank you. So that's what I love about biohacking. So anyway, so I was working with kids and working with mindfulness, and that was great. And I got a download one day. Again, right, I'm a big meditator, and I got a download of very, very clearly directing me into technology and consciousness. This was probably in 2014, so about 10 years ago. It was technology and consciousness. I felt very, very drawn to that exact concept, those two exact topics, and the merging of them, only to find that this is a big field, right? I think Ray Kurzweil talks about this concept of the singularity, right? Merging with technology, AI taking over the world, right? There's so many different ways that this applies. The social media companies taking all of our attention, selling our data, the attention economy, right? All that. So it's obviously a bigger field now. Then it was just kind of something's up. How are we not going to talk about this? This is we don't even know what these phones are doing to us most of the time. And some of the things we're learning are not great, like increasing ADHD and things like that. So we need to talk about it. And I honestly think need to invite conversation of the people to influence where a lot of this is heading and the direction these things are going, where we're not necessarily just passive receivers, but we're active agents in the design, in the development, in the testing, in the implementation. And because our attention is being utilized, we're giving it away, but these technologies often are designed to do that, right? It's hacking our brain, right? Hacking into our brain a little bit. I think that there should be ways for us to be compensated more for it, or some sort of feedback loop. And I'd like to start discussing and discovering what that could look like. Because this is training all the AI algorithms, all of our input, right? So that's profit, people making profits from that. And are we? So that's another piece I'd like to focus on in time. Anywho, so technology and consciousness. And so from there, I got very involved with like a lot of different communities out in San Francisco, primarily consciousness hacking, transformative technology lab. There's a lot of great people that I've had the opportunity to connect with over the years that I'm really looking forward to inviting on here to have these conversations with. So that's exciting. I won't really necessarily name fully names right now, but you're probably one of them if you think you are. So so I'd love to collaborate and I'd love to start this conversation. So I got really involved with that, and I started seeing all these different applications, right? It could be wearables, it could be Muse headset reading your brain waves, it could be infrared light, there's hyperbaric oxygen. There's so many different ways to hack our biology, our health, our mental health, our wellness, right? It's a beautiful field. And so if this is your foray and introduction into it, I invite you to go kind of learn about what's out there and, again, with the goal of feeling empowered about your health. So, one thing that really inspired me and motivated me was that when I was working in this field, at doing some marketing and just really understanding the surveying the scene, I grew. I started working with virtual reality. So that was kind of one of my first, outside of the dream coding, my first hands-on tech experience where I was working with one specific startup. San Francisco, working with a startup. I was living in LA, but the company's based out of San Francisco. And I was interested so the company I worked for was called Lucid Care, and it was a virtual reality headset that simulated meditation spaces, so nice environments or kind of celestial, cosmic, nice sounds, frequencies, guided meditations. So essentially training and teaching people how to meditate in virtual reality. And there was this company had clinical applications, so we were working in substance use disorder treatment centers to utilize this virtual reality as a way of helping people reduce substance cravings, and with the end goal being them continuing out their treatment for the whole time and not leaving against medical advice. So I implemented 5 different programs in there, 5 different facilities, 90-day pilot programs where I ran the virtual reality groups with about 10 people at a time, and both facilitated, both got testimony, got feedback, reported it back to the chief technical officer. So we were on the ground, we were bootstrapping it, we were making it work, right? So I'll go into more detail about that, but I just want to kind of give more of a brief background. So virtual reality, mindfulness-based stress reduction in rehabs in LA. And at this point, I did not have really scientific training. I was witnessing, not so much with that company, but with how this field, and especially as it relates to Silicon Valley and getting funding, right? It's like an idea, right? It's this idea. And I think that's kind of what they say Elon Musk does, right? It's like sometimes it's like an idea of something that people really want to hold on to, if not as much or more so than what it really is at that point, right? And of course, we need to start with the idea to dream, to vision, all of that. So again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I started noticing that they're making a lot of sales, a lot of demos, and this is working with people's health. This is working with technology that we don't really know what it's doing to our brain yet. And so one story is that I went to a virtual reality conference, and I witnessed at this conference 2 people that crossed their eyes and would look up. I saw it multiple times, and I instantly knew that was from bad VR, right? Because VR causes the eyes to cross, and so I felt like really, and then I started seeing, these people like different, like trying to go into schools or work with this technology for ADHD or all this stuff that didn't feel tested. It didn't feel proven. And I started getting nervous that it could be possibly dangerous after seeing the people cross their eyes like that. So that's where the motivation began. So I went to Cal State Long Beach and I got my master's in psychological research because I really wanted to have a firm understanding of experimental design. So I could read these papers, I could analyze them, I could look for cherry picking of data, or I knew the process. And now that I know the process, it's interesting because I recommend everybody learn that process. You don't have to be a scientist published, but I think it's really empowering to teach yourself how to read studies. And so you, again, empower yourself to feel confident in decision making. And of course, obviously, like consulting with experts and things like that, right? So I'm all about balance. So anyway, but I felt like I needed to know sound experimental design. I could not be working in this field of technology and consciousness and talking about these innovations and these designs without really having the confidence that I could read a paper or that I could speak in like the scientific language. And so that's what I did. I went and got my master's in Long Beach. I studied, I was the manager of a cardiovascular psychophysiology lab. Again, these are big words and they're intentionally big, so you probably make them confusing, but cardiovascular psychophysiology is our heart and our brain. And what's the connection between the heart and the brain? And they're very connected. So I studied that. I studied heart rate variability and early deployment to attentional threat. So individuals who have high anxiety oftentimes see threat in their environment way quicker than people that don't report having anxiety. They early deploy their attention to what could possibly be a threat, which then leads to a cascade of physiological responses like elevated heart rate, sweat, and the heart starting to beat like a metronome. We don't want the heart to beat like a metronome. We want the heart to be variable. That is an indicator of a variable heartbeat. Variably responsive, which means it doesn't beat like boom, boom, boom. It beats like boom, 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 boom. Anyway, we'll talk more about it. But anyway, so that's what I studied. I've looked at sound and I implemented frequencies, right? So our brain likes to mirror its environment. And that's why people who have epilepsy, when they see the light, they start seizing because they see the brain likes to mirror its surroundings. So that's what happens with epilepsy, but we do that with sound. Some theories say. Where our brain waves are not that different than sound frequencies. So they've discovered, and I'll do more like in-depth about this, but they've discovered that, if you entrain the brain for about 7 minutes to a certain frequency, your brain waves will start mirroring the frequencies you're hearing. So I worked with something called binaural beats. The way that works is you have one frequency in this ear, you have one frequency in this ear. Say there's like a 10 like a 10 difference in the hertz, the brain isn't used to taking in all the information from different sides. It's used to taking everything in stereo. So if you feed two different inputs, it kind of doesn't really know what to do with it. And it kind of creates an auditory illusion where it creates its own little frequency. And then your brain can start entraining to that frequency. So in sleep, are there really slow wave frequencies? So if you were to listen to delta waves, it's likely that it would guide you down into the sleep state. Again, right? This is kind of hacking a little bit of your biology. Similarly, high frequency do certain things, or sound has a really big impact on our brain and our cells. I believe it's going to be the next medicine. So that's where I stand on that. But I've studied sound. I from there went and studied sensory thresholds. So individuals who start not in training to the sound, understanding the reasons why, because possibly they have different sensory thresholds. So you can kind of turn that off in your brain if you don't want to entrain, right? You have to kind of be willing, more so, it's my understanding, willingly. And if you get overwhelmed and overstimulated, then people will just like shut off. They're like not into it. They don't want to do it. They have too much stimulation. So it's understanding people's thresholds before they're about to be like, screw this. So everything is individual, personal, right? We're all different, and different things work for different people. So I worked with that company. That was another company where we utilized this frequencies with biofeedback with the goal of supporting and enhancing exercise recovery using frequencies and sound. So that's a lot of my background has been kind of in these 3 projects. I can go into more detail about them, but I'm going to keep this kind of more short-ish. So that's kind of what my field has been. Then from there, I've worked, after that, I kind of have been making this decision internally about, do I go and work for Headspace? There's options now. Do I go and work for whatever other company that's, looking at physiology and the impact technology on our, so there's an interest in that. But I've also really feel like I want to do my own thing. I teach yoga, and I'm working with other clients right now, building different technologies for them. One was an individual that works with non-ordinary states of consciousness, like near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, so helping design technology around that. So I've kind of just found a way at this point to try to piecemeal different things together, so I can focus on what I love instead of needing, putting all my energy into 9-to-5 job. Not saying that I won't ever go back to that, but I'm really just taking the plunge now, which is kind of why I'm just pushing out with my sweatshirts on and my shit not totally all together, because it's like, if you're going to do it now, just do it. So that's me. So a little bit about my background, a little bit about my intention here, and I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are intrigued, and I look forward to connecting. Thanks.
Thunder only happens when it's raining. Players only love you when they're playing. Women, they will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean.